Hey, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're talking all about how to hire the right candidate for your company. So the other day, I read a statistic saying that 75% of employers have actually hired the wrong candidate or had bad hires. So that's a pretty high number. I have a few tips and tricks on how to hire an employee that you can trust. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let me talk a little bit more about who we are and why we are qualified to talk about the subject of hiring good candidates. So we're Trusty Hire, and we're a headhunter agency focusing on hiring the top 1% of overseas candidates. So clients we usually work with are companies that want to save a lot on hiring costs while also keeping their quality of hires really high. And we also have a 90-day guarantee, which means if the candidate does not work out within 90 days, we'll do a free replacement. And we're really confident about the hires we make because we have many years of experience knowing what are the good qualities of candidates, how to make sure that we interview them and screen them in a way that we can understand their motivations and really know kind of what makes them want to stay at a company for a long time. And also, most importantly, finding candidates that can actually do the work and produce very high quality work and also meet deadlines. So the very first tip I have for you is to define the role extremely clearly. So you want to know exactly why you're hiring this person, what are the exact responsibilities of this person. You want to be able to list out in bullet points what exactly this person will be doing. And after you figure that out, you need to make sure that the candidate knows, once you hire them, you want to make sure that they know exactly what their responsibilities are and make sure their expectations are completely aligned. So when they start work, they aren't feeling like any tasks they have are not part of their job description. So let's say you're hiring content writers. So you want to make sure that in the job description, you list out what types of articles this person will be writing and also the type of how much work output you expect from this person. And if you also want them to do a little bit of social media as well, make sure that's on the job description as well, so that doesn't come to a surprise. The next tip I have for you for hiring a good candidate is to have a solid sourcing strategy. So I've noticed a lot of employers focus too much on just putting a job posting out there and seeing what candidates apply. Oftentimes those candidates are not the most qualified, or you have a very limited pool of candidates. So especially if you're hiring a higher level role, someone that's a little bit more specialized, you definitely want a solid sourcing strategy. So essentially what sourcing is you're directly reaching out to candidates that are passive usually, that are not actively looking for a role, and you want to persuade them to come over to your company. So a lot of times when you're reaching out to candidates, the ones that actually do reply are the ones that have been kind of thinking about jumping roles, but they haven't been really active on the job postings yet. So you want to target those candidates. Sourcing does take a lot of time and effort to perfect and to really get a good candidate out of it. But if you have a solid sourcing strategy, you can definitely target a lot better candidates than the ones that just apply. The third tip I have for hiring the right candidate is to screen resumes really well. So one thing that candidates do a lot on resumes is they exaggerate. So because of that, it's a little bit hard to know exactly what their impact was or what they exactly did in their past roles. So in addition to seeing if they have the right skills that are needed for the role, you also want to look at a few other things to make sure that they're a good fit. And this includes how long they've been in their previous companies. So if they have a long track record at a single company or a few companies, that's a really good sign. You also want to see if they have any large employment gaps between jobs. So you can kind of check over those small things to see if they might be a good candidate or not. Fourth tip I have is to conduct structured interviews. So a lot of small companies and businesses, they usually like to just do interviews very informally, and I definitely do not recommend that. There's a few reasons why you want to do structured interviews. The first is you want to assess all candidates equally. So you want to ask all candidates similar or identical questions so that you can compare their answers and see which one you think is a better fit for your company. So having a structured interview also allows you to objectively assess each candidate and not put your feelings or how well you connect with the candidate with too much emphasis. You really want to assess two things, right? You want to assess if their skills are a good match and also if the personality is a good match. But if you focus too much on the personality aspect and not so much the skills, that can be a formula for a bad hire. So a structured interview process lets you analyze both of those things in an objective way. Number 5 is to conduct a written test. So this only applies to roles that need it, such as content writers or video editors. This allows you to kind of get a feel of what their skills are like. So for the written test, you want to make it as similar as the real work as possible, so you can kind of mimic what the actual role feels like. Good for both the candidate and also good for you as an employer, because the candidate has a good feel of what the work will be like, so they have good expectations, so they know what they're getting into. And also as an employer, you get to know how their skills are like, how they work, and how they communicate, and all of that kind of stuff. So number 6 is to determine if they're a good culture fit. So I know that term culture fit gets thrown around a lot and it's kind of confusing, but essentially what it means is, can they communicate well with you? You also want to make sure that they are genuinely interested in the role and not someone that just will take any role that comes to them. And also make sure their long-term goals are in line with what this role can provide for them. One more thing you want to consider is whether or not they respond well to criticism. You can assess this through just the interview process, or also you can assess this through like doing the written test. So for candidates that have done the written test, you can respond to the written test by giving them some feedback and seeing how they respond to it. That can be a semi-good indicator. And last thing you want to do is to check references. So a lot of employers skip over this step because it is pretty time consuming, but it actually makes the biggest difference. So right after you finish all the interviews and right before you send the offer letter, you want to call 1 or 2 of their previous employers and see what their opinion of the candidate is. And that's all the 7 tips I have for you on how to make sure you hire a good candidate and avoid bad hires. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us, but I'll see you in the next video.